I'll be buggered. Unbelievable. Look, looking back, and I'm now in my 60s, I can say that in the lives of everyone come pivotal moments. Moments that bring change. It could be winning the lottery. It could be inheriting a poker machine company. It could be making a discovery, or getting hit by a bus, or getting poisoned, attacked, stabbed, or blown up. Pivotal moments. Often they involve meeting people. I remember a novel I read years ago about a character whose opinion was that meeting new people was very, very dangerous, because they might introduce you to ideas that change your life, that make you doubt your certainty, or sway you, knock you off balance, be a bad influence. You might become part of the wrong crowd. It's a slippery slope. Next thing you know, you're making plans to rob a bank or blow up a pharmacy. But it's an idea that demands looking at the other possibility, that meeting new people can be a most uplifting experience. Uplifting and pivotal. Sometimes new people become friends. In 1975, my lifelong partner Deanna was posted to the art department at Lambton High School. The art department's staff room was shared with the music department, where Margaret Holt had been appointed. Sometime in the second term of that year, it was agreed that Deanna and I would go over to Margaret's place in Lambton and meet Roger and their very young family. It was Roger's second family. It was a Friday night. We got stuck into wines and cheeses, and we got talking. Roger liked to talk. He was full of theories of human behaviour and government responsibilities and financial opportunities and dreams and visions and songs. He was working on his own label of wine. I think it was called Passion Wine. I think the theory was that it was going to be a good leg opener. True, no, you cannot deny this. Now, and we discovered the astonishing coincidence that Roger's brother Jeff had brought my Deanna into the world in Young on the southwest slopes of New South Wales in 1951. More wine, more talk, more cheese. I noticed a piano, which I assumed Margaret used, and of course she did, being a musician, but it was also used by Roger. He played in his own band at the Waratah Mayfield Rugby Union Club every Saturday night. I said that I'd had my first job at the Carrington Hotel in Katoomba with my dad when I was 15. Dad was on tenor sax and me on bass. We talked clubs and music, popular music, more wine, more cheese, more talk. We left the Holt home at 3:45 in the morning. I drove the Volvo. I had to use the gutter as a directional guide because I was utterly legless. Deanna was legless. And we're driving along Hanbury Street, and out of the mist a white horse looms, riderless, galloping down Hanbury Street, and I'm concerned. I said to the girl, I'm going to have to report this. We stopped outside the Mayfield police station, and I stumble in. A middle-aged copper is typing behind the desk. He doesn't look at me, he just keeps typing. After a minute, he says, that's your Volvo parked out there? I said, yes. He said, don't blame me if you're booked, it's in the police zone. I took my chances. I reported the horse. He looked at me and said, where do you live? I said, around the corner. He says, go home. We did. See, it's a slippery slope. I'd fallen in with the drink-driving crowd in just one night. Anyway, 2 weeks later, Margaret asks Deanna if I'd be interested in having a play with Roger. I was only too keen and did some practice. And we go back over to Roger and Mark's place, and I have my bass and amp and speaker, and there's wine and cheese and olives. And Roger and I have a play. We started with Help Me Make It Through the Night. We played for half an hour or so, and we stop and have some wine, and cheese, and we talk. And Roger said that one day he'd like to have a little jazz quartet, and he'd call it Quadlibet. He could read music of all styles wonderfully well and had a great feel. Then he said how much the bass player he'd been using had been giving him the shits, and he wanted to replace him. More wine, more cheese. 2 a.m. we head off, no horses, all good. Marg and Deanna and I went to the club the following Saturday night. We dined in the restaurant where you had to wear a tie, and we watched the band do 8 brackets over 4 hours. It was a good night. I enjoyed watching Roger sometimes go into a dreamlike trance when playing, as if transported to some other place, a place where musicians like to be. 2 weeks later, I had my first night with the band. It was a bit of a shock. A beer was waiting at the end of each bracket. 8 beers, but I survived. Personally speaking, there is nothing more thrilling than playing music with others, being part of a band. It's up there with the most fun I've ever had in my life, and for that, Roger, I'm very, very grateful. The rugby club was a great place to observe people, rich and poor, smart and challenged, people on their best behaviour and people on their worst behaviour. Sometimes the club committeeman would get involved. One night, we just finished a bracket and started settling into our beer, and Roger was working out the songs for the next bracket while having a scotch and soda, I think Roger used to enjoy. And a burly committeeman barged into the band room and said, "Get back out there, you blokes. We've just come off," said Roger. "Bullshit," he says. "You blokes get out there now. One of you is going through the louvers."
I remember that.
I looked at Roger. I looked about. I couldn't see any louvers anywhere. The band room was a windowless hole. Roger shrugged, we downed our drinks, and back out we went. The club catered for nurses and rugby players mainly, and more often than not, the players would stand around near the bar with beers in hand, while the nurses danced amongst themselves on the dance floor. If a bloke asked a nurse for a dance, he was often derided and ridiculed. And predictably, a chant would go up, "Who's the man with the big red nose? Warra, 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 tars." It was a nice counterpoint to the girl from Ipanema. I didn't learn the name of the band until the last year. We were the Howard Group. I learnt this when we played the Doyle and RSL. And when it formed, the Howard Group was okay. Dennis McCarter was a fine singer and a good guitarist, and it was always a bonus when Frank Vandenberg joined us. I can remember the first time when he played and sang Rockin' Robin. I was amazed by his energy and natural musicality. When he is performing, Frank is a force of nature. And I'd look at a grinning Roger, and he looked like a man in heaven, taken to that place where musicians most like to be. We watched as Roger and Marg's family grew, and the transition to the bucolic life in Black Hill, where their mutual love of gardening and breeding proteas and a rural idyll became a generous, peaceful oasis. The property was peppered with an ancient form of cycad, and they generously gave us one which is still living with us after more than 40 years. Playing in Roger's band extended the window into the world of my father and my family. It was one of the richest experiences of my life, and I'm eternally grateful that for a time I was good enough to be in Roger Holt's band. I'd fallen in with the right crowd at the right time. It gave me the confidence to imagine a time when earning a living out of performing was a possibility. Roger and Marg, we are all the richer for having you both. in the story of our lives. Could you raise your glasses to Margaret and to Roger on his 90th birthday? To Roger. Thank you very much. Just while I think of it, there was the issue. Dennis tells this story of one night being on the tiles with Roger, and Roger woke up at 6:45 in the morning, slumped over the wheel of the white Jaguar with the radio on and the headlights on in Spears Point Park. Don't know what happened, but he's not saying much.